So is Ajax because it's clean code? No. Asynchronous JavaScript and XML, right? Anyway, the whole idea, as I said, is you have your little browser object in code that you can use to send those asynchronous requests in the background, and then just update part of your page. So very, very powerful technique. Oh, actually, there was something right at the bottom. I kind of forgot about it, of my copy-paste file there. Let me just bring it over here for a sec. Oh, yeah. This came up thinking about this a little bit later on, that you know, the code that we have is not very dry in one area in particular. Let me bring up the Visual Studio again. So, oh, I'm running still, right? So if I come back to the controller, remember we added this catch block. And so this particular code is all over the place in our application, right? You know, if we don't have a specific error message, we're usually giving something like unable to save changes, try again, et cetera, right? So it's not very dry in that we're repeating this code throughout multiple spots and multiple controllers throughout the whole application. It's not a big deal, right? But, you know, if you did want to try and address that and say, well, what if my end user, the client who's writing out the check, okay, and paying for me to do this development, wants it reworded a different way? Well, sure, you could do a copy replace and find, you know, probably, you know, every once in a while you might have changed the wording manually here and there, and so you might not find them all, and so on and so forth. So, you know, something that is not hard to do is to actually just create a ViewModel object to handle your exception message. And then it's easy because you can just maintain your default value there. If you were going to follow that route, I'm not saying this is critical, but because it came up in a discussion, it only takes a moment or two to show you the techniques. I'm going to add a class here. I'm going to call it Exception Message. As usual, I like to put the little VM at the end to know that it's a ViewModel class. And when we think about when we add model errors, right, there's usually two parts. There's the property, right, that we optionally can show the information beside. If we leave it as an empty string, it goes to the validation summary at the top. Otherwise, if we want it beside a particular property, then we put that in here. And then here's my general error message. Unable to save changes, try again if the problem persists, see your administrator, right? So by doing it in this one class, then, if I ever want to change the wording, as long as I always use this class, I can just come and change it here. So how would I use that in the controller? Well, you know, basically these catch blocks here, I could just simply change like this, right? Let me just put the code in. So basically, I just new up one of those objects, okay? So it already has those default values, so I don't need to change them unless I have a good reason to do it, okay? So I can do things like this, you know, get the base exception, the message, see if it contains mentioning of a unique constraint. Of course, if you have more than one, you can check for each separately, right? And if whichever one it is, or if there's more than one, you can handle that, right? But if there's a unique constraint here, I know it's the trial name and that I want to give this specific message. So basically, I'm overwriting those default values in my little message object here. And at the end, I just add model error and use the error property error message in my default object. It's not a huge difference in here, right? It's a couple less lines of code. Yeah, that's not a big deal. I guess the bigger difference is just the fact that if we ever needed to modify that default error message, it's in one place now in our code. As long as I copied and pasted the wrong code. Right? It just puts it in one place instead, right? Okay, so that's a little thing. I mentioned it in the copy-paste file, so I felt I should just talk about it briefly. All right, well, let's get into the next actual material.